Hey everybody, this is Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. And it's just Marco here today. I'm here to talk to you about Mindhunter Season 1. Sorry, I was just confusing a good show with a bad show. Mindhunter Season 1. I don't usually like watching serial killer shows and movies because they're heavily biased, one-sided, and they never talk about the angles and the evidence that point to the accomplices and occult connections. With a show like Mindhunter, it already has one strike. It's a David Fincher project. I saw Zodiac 2 years ago, and it was the most boring, biased, and one-sided piece of average crap ever. So I thought immediately a show with 10 episodes would just extend that mainstream narrative history crap. But I was kinda wrong. This show is a mixed bag just like Zodiac. I find myself frequently skipping scenes, scanning ahead to see what happens. The first episode really made me not want to watch the show. In fact, it took me like 3 days to get through the first episode. It contains a 30-minute sequence of the main character meeting this college girl and her bragging about how smart she is compared to him. Needless to say, I skip every single scene she is in, except for the sequence where she visits Holden's partner's house. Holden is the main character. I don't like him. It makes for a much better viewing experience to skip her scenes, honestly. And, it really makes sense when you watch a David Fincher project to skip around a couple of scenes. Because there are some that are just, they don't need to be there. Also, big problem, I hate the main character. He's a wimp who thinks very highly of himself and he's quite cringe. His partner is much cooler and a better character. This show feels like it's been extended too much already. It feels like a small piece of a gigantic book, and that small piece was being read by a very slow person. And what I mean by that is someone who has maybe like someone in school, when you used to popcorn read and someone takes their turn and they're just doing it very slowly because it's like hard to get through everything. That's what this is like. It's very, very slow. And there's only the highlight of the show is the interrogations. Not surprisingly, the interrogations are really where the show is good. I mean, you have these scenes where these characters are sort of like gauging each other, like what's your angle here, and the serial killers, like some of them get really kind of ugh. And I love seeing that. It's really cool, but it's at the same time it feels like it's a show. It doesn't feel like a real thing. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but Colonel Russell Williams, huge piece of shit. I watched his interrogation where he finally admits at the end, it's like 4 hours long or 3 hours long, and he finally admits that he killed these girls and he disposed of their bodies, and just really creepy guy. And I watched the whole thing. That was real. This is like the opposite of real. It feels very, 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 very fake. And so, there's one interrogation I hated the most. That was the Richard Speck one. I thought it was useless and boring. The best interrogation was the one in the last episode where I don't want to give anything away, but the way that Holden, even though I don't like him, the way that he uses evidence and does all these strategies, I love seeing that. I thought that was cool. The performances, though, by the killers are very good. My favorite serial killer was actually the shoe fetishist. Yeah, fetishist. Okay, whatever. He was very charismatic, but he had this really creepy and dark undertone to him that he never really shares, but I mean, you can just tell it's there. I don't know. There's just something about him. And then of course you have the last thing that he ever does, which I don't want to spoil it, but it's gross. I didn't know you were allowed to do that, and when you meet someone in prison. Uh, with all the positivity though from that little part, I find myself being in the middle about this. It's overrated, just like most of all Fincher's work. I mean, I hate The Social Network, and what Fincher loves to do, and what he did in The Social Network, was take the smallest, most insignificant things and overblow them to the nth degree. A guy spills a glass of milk, no big deal, but Fincher takes that glass of milk and makes that the crime of the century. That's the best way that I can put it with this show. This tactic works sometimes, like with the tickling principle, but when it doesn't, it falls in a very glaring way. The music of the show is definitely one of the strong points as well, and helps elevate some boring, kind of long moments where you're like, what's going on? In particular, there's this certain chime cue. There's this like chiming going on that's really creepy whenever the B.T.K. killer is on screen in the pre-titles, like the openings of the show. I love that music. It's very creepy. My favorite vignette of the show is when Holden debates what to do with the tickling principle. I legitimately thought the principal was going to commit a murder at one point, and so I'm wondering if the principal will return at one point in a future season. I felt very conflicted about what he should have done with the principal, because on one hand, I mean, I get it's just what he did was so creepy and disturbing to me. The principal, and the way that he acts when people say that he's doing something wrong, like very, very creepy guy. And I don't know if that guy's real or not, but ooh, I have a bad feeling about him. Now let's talk about the team. I mean, this show is about a team, eventually, kinda. Not really, because they're not a very good team, to be honest. Holden's partner is a badass, and he's the coolest guy in the group. He's basically always the one standing up for Holden when he should be, and then kind of doing the opposite when he needs to. Like, he's the perfect person on the team. Wendy is annoying and unlikable. I don't know why they had to make her lesbian. Like, she's lesbian in real life. I don't care. It's not pertinent to this season. If it comes up in a later season, like there's some sort of a plot point where it does matter, then bring it up. But why did they need to talk about the fact that she's a lesbian? I think I know why, but I'm not going to tell you guys why. I'll just let you guys figure that out for yourselves. The third guy is the worst of the worst. Craig, whatever his name is. He's a pansy, and so far he has no respect for me. So basically, Holden's partner is the only one I like out of the whole team, as I said before. One last aspect I'd like to touch on, though, is the feminist agenda aspect. And now, you know, I love talking about agendas. There are so many obvious feminism points made, and it's grossly annoying to say the least. The worst one is when the dad of one of the kids being tickled by the principal keeps saying, "Boys will be boys," as if that's some sort of a negative thing to say. That whole scene was cringeworthy. Since this is coming from Netflix, the agenda shit doesn't surprise me. Netflix itself is a woke joke. Anyways, there are a lot of high points and low points, but nothing makes it either horrible or amazing. I give this an average roast beef dinner. You have this really tough roast beef. Some pieces are good, some are fatty and rubbery. The mashed potatoes and gravy are just okay, nothing special. The green beans are good, but some of them are burnt and lack seasoning. Overall, there's nothing special about this meal. I'd rather watch Hannibal, a fictional show about profiling, Or Manhunt Unabomber, a nonfiction show about profiling. I would not recommend this first season. As for the second season, I will be slowing down and reviewing one episode every day or so. Binging television is the worst experience that you can have watching anything, in my opinion. I hate it. And I never want to binge a TV show again after this. Especially, of all the things you could choose to binge, just at least do not binge a David Fincher project. They're so hard to watch when you're just watching one episode after. I feel drained. I feel tired. I feel like I've wasted 20 years, 20 plus years just watching television, like in a row. And I even texted out on Facebook on our page. I said every single scene feels like 10 years goes by, and it's true. I know that I've been overwhelmingly negative, but it's just how I feel at this point after wasting 10 hours of my time watching this kind of mediocre show. And so now I'm going to do a quick recap of my letter grades of each episode, and then I might do a spoiler or two. Episode 1 I give a D+. Episode 2 I give an A-. Episode 3 I give a B-. Episode 4 and 5 I give a B+. But then episode 6 I give it a B-. Episode 7 I give a C+. Episode 8 I give a C+, almost a B-. Episode 9 I give an F. Episode 10 I give just an A. So that averages out to about a C, which is about what I said with the whole average roast beef dinner. I'm not really a big fan of roast beef. I've never really had good roast beef. I've always had this kind of like mediocre roast beef meals, and just so that's what the show feels like to me. In terms of spoilers, I really got aggravated when they made a big thing about him using the C word. I know that they talked about this in the first episode, like the FBI hates their agents using curse words, whatever. I think it's stupid. I think it's dumb. Another thing that bothered me was, of course, the girlfriend. It's not the fact that I didn't like her. In fact, she's a good actress. It's just that every single scene with her, I just felt like, why do I need to watch this? I just want to get to the serial killer stuff. And then with Wendy, she just, she complains in one episode, and she complains in another episode. She joined their team, and every single episode she complains about something. So I don't like her. And then you have Greg, the traitor, the coward, the loser. He hands the tape in even though he was not supposed to. Just very disgusting, cowardly, traitorous behavior from this weasel little guy, and just ugh. And then something bad happens at the end. I think he has like a heart attack or something from getting hugged by Ed Kemper. And that scene, I loved that scene. It felt like such a right way to end the season of like, well, and then of course you have the B.T.K. thing, but it felt like such a nice way to end things. But in terms of the B.T.K. killer, I thought his scenes were cool, but some of them kind of felt a bit like something that rhymes with clock teasing, and that's what I felt like with B.T.K. Overall, though, the interrogation that I truly loved out of everything was that one in the last episode. It was different. They didn't have to go far. They didn't have to look far. They knew who the killer was right off the bat. And I loved how they just wore him down and destroyed him and forced him to confess. I loved that because they weren't torturing him. They weren't doing anything bad. They were just, he was talking like he would like him to talk, and then he showed him the evidence. I love that. I thought that was very creative and smart. But I don't like the main character at all. He's a wimp. He's a soy boy, and his partner is clearly the alpha male in the group. And I'd kind of like to see more of the alpha male doing things in the second season. I don't know though. I'm just this isn't really what I think that they should be doing with serial killer shows right now. I think that they need to really investigate the aspects of having multiple accomplices, of the occult connections. They need to do more of that and less of the oh, why do serial killers kill? Why do people do this? Why do people do that? Because at the end of the day, this show is all about motive. They have a misunderstanding and say that like serial killers, they're just killing for the F of it. And really that's not true. I mean, you look at most of these serial killers, there were videotapes involved, there were pictures involved. You really don't think that they were committing these murders and then selling these videotapes to to the mob or to someone? Like, you really are you really that ignorant? Just I'm gonna put some links in the description, but I'm having doubts about the second season. I already was having doubts because I knew they were going to do the Charles Manson thing. I don't know how heavily that's going to play into the second season, but overall, the first season, for the last time, it's fine. It's really not worth my time, honestly. I know that sounds like a shitty thing to say, but I'd rather watch Cobra Kai Season 2 over again like 10 times before watching this season one last time. In fact, I don't think I'll ever watch this season again. And I don't think that's a very good thing that you can say about a TV show. So I'll leave it with that. In terms of David Fincher, I love Seven. I've seen Zodiac. I hate it. I hate The Social Network. I kind of like Gone Girl, but I kind of don't because some people misconstrue it to be a feminist movie. I don't think I've seen anything else of his. But, oh yes, I've seen Steve Jobs. I love Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is my favorite of the two, of The Social Network and Steve Jobs. I don't think he might have produced that one maybe, but that was very much like Social Network, but done better. And so just look at those two and compare them and see how Social Network failed on so many aspects, just like this show. So that's it, everyone. Goodbye!